Welcome everybody to our Innovation Fireside Chat with Ronnie Chatterji. Dr. Ronnie Chatterji, Democratic nominee for state treasurer, longtime friend of mine, and also an economist and a professor at Duke University School of Business. I want to welcome everybody here to this show. And the first few minutes will be on Radio Merci. We want to thank them for broadcasting this. It's the Triangle region's largest radio station, also aired in Baltimore, Philly, Dallas, around the US. So this will be listened to many Americans around the country. And we are so honored. It's on 99.9 FM HD4, 1490 AM, 101.9 FM, Durham and Morrisville, Cary. And so we will be heard live on the radio. I want to thank radio for being here. We're going to get right to it. Dr. Chatterji, Ronnie, welcome to the show. Congratulations on you being the Democratic nominee. And we welcome you to the show and our fireside chat.
Thank you very much for having me, Councilman Rao. Well, now Cal Steve, because you can call me Ronnie as well. I honestly want to say I thank you for all the service you're doing to Morrisville and the entire state. It's an inspiration to all of us.
Well, thank you. Thank you. The best thing about being first is to know you're not the last. And I think it's exciting what you're doing. So let's talk really, first of all, I'm going to go on photographic memory here because I read Ronnie Chatterji's background a lot because I just admire how brilliant this guy is. But he went to Cornell University. He has, and if I get anything wrong, Ronnie, I'm getting old. My photographic memory may be getting off. He has a PhD from UC Berkeley. He is a professor at Duke University Fuqua School of Business, where he really focuses a lot on entrepreneurship and different types of classes. And he took a stint and worked at the White House Council of Economic Advisors for the Obama administration. And so we're going to learn a little bit about what he did there. And he decided to get into the world of politics and threw his hat into the ring to be the next state treasurer, which is quite amazing. So we want to welcome you, Ronnie, to the show, and want to talk a little bit. I'm going to dive right into, first of all, just real quickly, your background, where you grew up in the northern part of the country, right?
Yeah, and well, your photographic memory, I got to say, Steve, is intact because all those details were right. My folks came to the United States in 1961. My dad got off a boat the day that John F. Kennedy was inaugurated. Interestingly, he got off a boat in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is a really funny coincidence in terms of our roots in this country. But we settled as a family in upstate New York in a small town where my dad was a public university professor and my mom also worked for the state, working with adults with special needs. I grew up in a family with two state employees, both who had a pension and a state health plan coverage for me and my sisters that really mattered a lot to how we grew up. We grew up there, my parents still live there, but as kids grew up, we went and pursued our education, and eventually our occupations in other parts of the country. So I came to North Carolina in 2006 to take that job at Duke, and never realized then that I would marry a woman who is from the South and went to Duke, and I'd be here for the rest of my life. But this is where we're raising our three kids, and it's a wonderful place to be.
That's great. Fantastic. Well, let's talk about the treasurer's role first. The first 12 minutes or 15 minutes will be radio, and then we're going to go into a fireside chat. But I want to change up the order of my questions. And first, just say, you're an economist. I don't think you're a geek, because if you're a geek, I'm really in trouble. That's a conversation for another time. But what motivated you to run for the state treasurer? And for those listening on the show, there's a lot of people from this community that don't know what the state treasurer does.
That's right. That's right. No, and it's the most important position that no one's ever heard of in North Carolina. So for me, when I got to Duke, my theory of change was in my research and my teaching and the service I was doing to the university. That's the way my father had done his career, and I thought I would do the same. But something changed for me when President Obama ran for office in 2008. When he had said that a skinny kid with a funny name could do anything in America, I thought he was talking about me and people like us, and I felt like I could get involved in a way. And I think, Steve, it's also seen people like you and Sadish Garamella and others around the state, Jay Chowdhury, run and be successful in office. It makes one think about themselves differently. It makes one think, hey, I can maybe do more. I could put what I know to work for the state of North Carolina. And so when I came back to North Carolina after being in the White House, I started to get a lot more involved in state and local politics. And Governor Cooper, when he was elected in 2016, put me on these two statewide commissions, one to deal with entrepreneurship, which is my expertise, but also transportation infrastructure, which I've learned a lot about working on the NC First Commission. And it was that experience that led me to ask questions about where the big economic and financial decisions are being made in North Carolina? And the answer on all those is the Treasurer's Office. It is probably not just one of the most powerful positions in North Carolina's state government, but in state government anywhere across the country. And looking forward to telling you more about all the different things the Treasurer does.
That's fantastic answer. So the Treasurer's Office, basically just walk us through what the Treasurer's Office does. And it's basically the pension funds, retirement, health plan, investing, right? Money, right? All
That's
those.
exactly right. So if you think about it this way, think about the pensions to start. The treasurer is the sole trustee of our $100 billion pension fund. So people like my parents would save money every year to be matched by state or local government, and that money needs to be invested. Because we invest that money wisely, we can pay out these pensions for years to come. On the other hand, if the money isn't being invested well, we get into big trouble. And that's one of my concerns with North Carolina today, the way we're managing the pension fund.
So you would manage it differently.
Yeah, I would definitely manage it differently. And we could definitely get into that as well. I'll just say that what makes North Carolina different is that we have a sole trustee model. We rely on the voters to elect one person, not a board, to oversee the $100 billion pension fund. So you better make sure that person understands economics and finance, puts together a good team, and makes the right decisions about how we allocate our assets across stocks, bonds, private equity, venture capital, real estate. The second piece is the state health plan. So anytime if you're a state employee, you go to the hospital or to a healthcare provider, the reimbursement it comes through the state health plan, working with a third-party health insurance company, an administrator, in this case, Blue Cross Blue Shield North Carolina. So we're the largest payer of healthcare in North Carolina, $3.3 billion. When you run a health plan for 720,000 members, you can be innovative in terms of how you pay for healthcare. You can hold providers accountable not just for cost, but for quality, and you can make great things happen when it comes to public health for people in North Carolina. So that's the other big responsibility. Now, put those two together, put the state health plan plus the pension fund together, that's an amazing portfolio. But let's also add state and local bonds. On the council in Morrisville, you know how important it is to use debt financing to build some of the infrastructure that's going to make North Carolina stronger after COVID. Building schools, building broadband, water and sewer, all that gets done through the treasurer approving and issuing bonds. And so we have a fantastic opportunity in North Carolina to have a chief economic officer to improve lives of everyone in the state, whether you're a state employee or not. Those are the three main responsibilities of the state treasurer.
So, and I see this coming in on Facebook. We got a few more minutes, but during the pandemic, so many people died in North Carolina, across the U.S. So you think this office can be leveraged in a better way to help many people suffering through the healthcare crisis today, right?
Definitely. Two things we can do. One is we can invest our pension money better. We've lost about $3 billion in the pension fund just by not following our policy. We need a nerd, not a politician in that job, and that's what I'm hoping to bring. And on the healthcare side, our rural hospitals have been hit incredibly hard by the decline in elective surgeries and ER volumes. The state health plan should be accounting for that, not cutting reimbursements to rural hospitals at this time. We also need to expand Medicaid, Steve, across North Carolina. That's a really big part of the healthcare equation in our state. Those are all things I support and will help get done as our next state treasurer.
Two more questions before we go into our fireside chat. And I'm going to ask probably the same question when we're with a lot of our social media viewers. Mm-hmm. What was it about, what did you learn on your role on the White House Council of Economic Advisors? What specific things were you working on?
Yes. It was the biggest downturn since the Great Depression. Now that might be different now that we've gone through this COVID situation, but what I learned was that we need to invest in American jobs through infrastructure, education, and healthcare to be resilient from these crises. If you think about the biggest mistakes we made in the aftermath of the Great Recession, it's that state and local governments cut back on spending. And that led to a decline in jobs in a sector where 1 out of 12 Americans work. We also need to do more to encourage small business entrepreneurs. See, we'll talk about this more later, but most of the new jobs in America are created by new businesses that are often small. We need to be doing much more to encourage that in North Carolina. And the treasurer could be the chief economic officer who actually encourages entrepreneurship and innovation in the state. I think that's something I'm really interested in. Those are the things I learned working at the White House Council of Economic Advisors. This current crisis is different in many ways, but a lot of the same lessons I think can be applied to help us in North Carolina.
Okay, I mean, that's really good. And so, and the follow-up to that is, that's why we wanted to talk about, making North Carolina a startup state. So you think that the Treasurer's Office could help, fund more entrepreneurs, grow startups, those kinds of things, right? And we'll talk in the second half of the program how we're going to do
Definitely, definitely. Through access to capital, through convening people from all over the country and all over the world to see how great North Carolina small businesses are, and connecting some people with an idea in North Carolina in a stronger way. We can do all that and make our state the #1 state for startups.
Um, the final question I have is, if elected, you'll be the first Asian American elected in North Carolina. What do you believe that means for the future of our state and our children and grandchildren? And I was the first one elected, and now we've got to have you on the verge of making history. So what do you feel like right now?
It means for a kid from Morrisville, anything is possible. It means for a kid from North Carolina, anything is possible. And it means for an American, anything is possible. I'm not a typical political candidate. Look at my last name, has like 15 letters. I'm a professor, a first-time candidate. But I really believe in this country. And I think when I win on November 3rd, it'll be because people believed in me, placed their trust in me. And regardless of differences in background, ethnicity, these things are showing, I think, that people want to invest in someone they trust. And I think that's good news for all Americans, including those from diverse backgrounds.
Okay, well, where do people go to learn more about your campaign?
RonnieChatterji.com. That's RonnieChatterji.com. If you already have your application ballot in your hand, no matter where you are across North Carolina, look at the top right corner of your ballot and you'll see Ronnie Chatterji for treasurer. And I hope I can earn your vote on November 3rd or whenever you decide to vote.
Well, we appreciate you being on the show, and we want to thank Radio Murchie. We're going to continue our town hall. This will be airing 4 o'clock on Sunday, and we're really excited to have him here. That was a great interview, Ronnie, and we wish we could have you longer in the radio, but you know, we got these 15-minute kind of sound bites that we have to do. Advertising revenues are down right now, and if you want to learn about supporting Radio Murchie, just shoot me an email. I'll get you in with our manager, and we'll get you some good opportunities. But
I would love it. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. We're going to continue our town hall meeting. Thank you, Radio Murchie, for being with us. So I'm going to focus now more on making North Carolina a startup state. I'm wearing, you can't see it, but I'm wearing my Startup Summit.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And I want to start with one of the most exciting moments at the Startup Summit, where I had the honor of welcoming and introducing a family friend of mine, John T. Chambers, the former CEO of Cisco Systems, and now the CEO and chairman of JC2 Ventures in San Jose. So he's an investor. Unbelievable. And we're going to send you the clip of the interview. We all grew up in West Virginia, and he said something in Raleigh last year when I met him in person, that we're going to automate away 40% of the jobs in the next decade that we know of today, but we can create 15 million new jobs. And many of the jobs, John says, can be in startups around emerging technologies like AI, analytics, data science, smart cities. He says India, he's actually an advisor to Prime Minister Modi, who actually calls him the global ambassador to India. So that morning, he actually had a call with the Prime Minister on technology issues, which is quite amazing.
Yeah.
But he keeps saying India's getting it right. Other parts of the world are getting it right. You've written on this issue. So one of the things many of my people that are listening today, they want to know, given your experience from academics, as an author, I've read some of your stuff, the experience in the White House, what do you think, what do you think about that? How does the United States and North Carolina get part of those 15 million jobs in startups?
It's a great point. I mean, I think, the states that are really going to succeed in the next period after COVID are going to be the states that both become hospitable to the development of these technologies, not just commercializing them in labs, but also bringing them to market in startup companies, but also ones that build the social safety nets to help people go through the transition. Because if 40% of the jobs aren't automated and we create 15 million, there's going to be a transition where some people who lose their jobs aren't necessarily going to be able to get those new ones. State officials have to think about that, including state leaders like the treasurer. And so I think the states that do it best are the ones who are going to be pro-job creation, pro-entrepreneurship, also giving people the skills they need, the on-ramps into those jobs. So that's the first thing I'd say. Second, when I look at America's innovative and entrepreneurial potential, I think of a few different areas. R&D. There's nothing more important to America's scientific and innovation capabilities than investing money in research and development. Now, these are the kinds of investments we made after World War II that resulted in America having a technological lead and laying the foundation for Silicon Valley and Research Triangle. Now is the time to double down on research and development in energy, in healthcare, in the basic sciences. If we don't have that, we won't have the pipeline of good ideas. The second piece is commercialization and translation. If all the great ideas are in universities or national labs and nobody with an entrepreneurial spirit like John Chambers is thinking about bringing that stuff out of the lab and starting companies, we're not going to get the ideas to market, and we're not going to be able to monetize these and create jobs. We need to work on that as well. The last piece is education. Who's going to work in these companies? If we only have a small slice of people who are qualified to do these jobs, who have the education, we're not going to have an equitable country. We're not going to have a strong country. And so we need to focus really hard on STEM education in particular, science, technology, engineering, and math, to make sure that all Americans have the opportunity to compete for these jobs. Those are the three things that I keep a close eye on. There are many other issues around the availability of venture capital, regional economics, but these are three big things: R&D, translation, and education that I focus
Oh, that's a really, you did a great job. And I mean, there's a lot of information out there. If you Google them or just research articles I've read, what was it? Was there any, then we're going to talk a little, in a few minutes, we're going to talk about your treasurer's role and what you would do to help startups. I'm getting a lot of questions coming in saying they want to know what you can do to help them.
Yeah.
What was it your role in the White House Economic Advisors? Was there any specific projects you were working on entrepreneurship? That question just came in.
Sure, yeah, and Steve, you were part of this too in your role, but Startup America was one of the most important projects I launched, or I was part of, I should say, at the White House. I was the point person for Startup America at the Council of Economic Advisors. And there weren't a lot of economists necessarily interested in entrepreneurship at that time, but I was someone who really thought that was the most important thing I could work on. Startup America had a few different parts of it. One is we worked hard to cut taxes for small businesses and reduce the tax burden on them. We cut taxes for small businesses probably now 19 different times in the Obama administration. And that's incredibly helpful to small businesses having more money for payroll and capital investments. Second thing is reducing regulatory barriers for startups, both to start and scale. That is incredibly important. We did that as part of Startup America. Third was mentorship. We really find a lot of startup founders need mentors, people who have done it before them, to give them guidance in their specific industry. Matching people with mentors turns out to be more challenging than we think. And Startup America also made a big investment in that as well. So I've learned a ton about how federal government policy can support entrepreneurs. But in the end, Steve, I think whether it's federal or state, all a government can do in the best case is set the table for private sector entrepreneurs to do what they do best, which is create, innovate, and scale. The federal government in particular needs to make sure that the table stakes are there for the economy. And I think entrepreneurs will figure out a lot of the rest. State government should complement what the federal government's doing, try to be innovative in their particular domains. But again, entrepreneurs are going to take the lead in North Carolina and around the country.
Okay, I mean, this is just fantastic. I mean, I love this. I'm having so much fun doing this interview. It's you're doing a great job. Now, let's turn to the state treasurer's role. Okay, you talked earlier about healthcare, about pension, retirement, what you would do differently in terms of. I know one thing you've said is you're going to hire an investment officer, but what there are many startups attending this today, and they want to know, what can the state treasurer do? And I think we have a great opportunity with your experience to help provide funding, because this is one thing that I'm hearing across the board, even for the entrepreneurs that I serve in Morrisville, that they just can't find the capital they need to get through the tough time they're in now. And resources, mentoring, you hit it on the nail, right? Yeah. Better connecting. So what could you do as state treasurer? There's a Senator Choudhury, when he worked for Janet Cowell, set up a fund, I think.
Yes.
It still exists.
I mean, I think about it as the 3 C's. We got capital, connectivity, and convenience. Those are the 3 things we can do for entrepreneurs. Let's start with capital. So when you think about what we have in the state treasurer's office, there's an unclaimed property fund that under Treasurer Cowell, we took a piece of that and created a venture capital multiplier fund. This is to deal with the exact issue that you're hearing about from entrepreneurs in Morrisville, which is we need more venture capital in North Carolina. Now, there's a challenge. Government isn't usually in the venture capital business. The early stage risky bets that are made in venture capital are not something that matches the profile of a state government in many cases. So we need to make sure we're leveraging our money. We don't want to be the first money in the deal. You might want to make sure private investors are already in it. That's how the venture capital multiplier fund is designed. we can scale that program and also improve it in ways that can help more early stage entrepreneurs. Because you're right, especially during this COVID period, if you don't have the capital to expand or to get you through these tough periods, you're not going to be able to be successful. And a lot of businesses across North Carolina are closing because of that. The second thing we can do is connectivity. We can connect North Carolina businesses to global markets in a much better way than we're doing now. Think about all the financial institutions that the Department of State Treasury deals with. We invest money in some of the top venture capital and private equity firms in the world. We should ask those companies to come to North Carolina to meet the great outdoor recreation companies in Asheville, the great health companies in the RTP, the ag, biotech, and aviation companies in Eastern North Carolina. Those connections can be made if you have someone in the Department of State Treasurer who's thinking about entrepreneurship, who's thinking about connecting you. When a new company comes to locate in North Carolina, take JP Morgan Chase in Charlotte, when they open up branches, we should be thinking about how to expand access to credit and capital with JP Morgan coming to the state. When big companies relocate here and have supply chains, we need to be putting our small businesses into those supply chains. We've never had an economist on the Council of State who could think through these things and connect the dots. This is no one's portfolio when it comes to the Council of State. It should be the state treasurer's job to make these things happen, and I will. The last piece is we can do much more on convening. All the entrepreneurs watching here today, I wonder how many times you've been invited to state government to talk about what you're working on and how we can help. Well, the Department of State Treasurer should convene and bring together entrepreneurs from all across North Carolina to talk about that and figure out what the agenda should be. Nobody has all the answers. The idea of entrepreneurship is that the answers happen when we decentralize economic activity and people work on the best solutions. It's the same thing here. I would love to bring you together and understand what we can do better. We got to do a lot more listening in government before we start acting, and that would be the third piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I know. I mean, before this COVID pandemic, I actually was offering to help you get around the state doing like an innovation road tour. And then, I mean, I guess this is it. We're doing it virtually, but it's not the same.
It's gotta be virtual, Steve. I mean, being data candidates in this era, it's all virtual. People joke, they say, you got to kiss babies and shake hands. And I said, I'm only kissing my own babies, and I haven't shaken a hand for 7 months. So, you know.
We have a few more minutes, but you know, I think that you really that's so capital, connectivity, and then helping connect better entrepreneurs with their ideas, which is the frustration I hear a lot of in North Carolina. So I think that's really, really good. I just had a question that came in about, and you and I have had this conversation. How would you leverage innovation in artificial intelligence data, which is they're calling the new fuel of the new economy? How would you leverage data in the state treasurer's office in AI?
There's so many interesting ways. I know, Steve, your background in this, we could talk for hours about it. And I'm sure there's people watching with a lot of knowledge about it as well. Two quick ideas. One is when you're thinking about folks who are calling into the hotline to get information about their pension or healthcare, AI, including AI products from companies right here in the RTP, be used to basically route those calls to the right person and oftentimes answer questions that don't require a person on the other end, getting someone a quick answer for what they're looking for. When people have questions about their pension or their health benefits, they need high quality information. They need it right now. And AI can be used in a lot of the call center operations that we use in the Department of State Treasurer. Second piece, more on the population health side. We have 720,000 people we need to think about when we're paying for healthcare. We need to monitor the progress of their disease. We need to monitor the preventive health behaviors that they're engaging in, smoking cessation programs, for example. We need to monitor how often maybe they're going to the hospital to get checked out for a condition. AI can help us figure out, of course, by looking at large data sets, which folks are in most need of that call or that nudge or the help of a nurse, for example. Right now, if we're not putting that technology to bear, we're flying blind. And so I think when you're doing population health management, AI can be very useful. And I know there's more than a dozen companies in the research trial park.
Yeah. Well, that'd be great. I think it's a matter of connecting them with the office. In terms of small business, can you talk a little bit about, there's a lot of small businesses suffering now, just, you know, restaurants, mom and pops, and they're not getting the funding they need with no more people, the protection program, all of these things. What are some things the Treasurer's Office can do to help the small businesses? Because this thing's going to go until the end of 2021, at least, they say.
So, I mean, you're right, Steve. I do want to say one thing, though, before I talk about PPP and our retail and our restaurant sector, which is on this point about AI and connecting startups to the Treasurer's office, we ought to have a hackathon, an open competition where we give people problems that the Treasurer's office is dealing with. Let's say on the call center side, a health plan administration, or something about the pension fund. We ought to open that challenge up and have entrepreneurs across North Carolina compete to offer a solution. And part of the incentive is to eventually work more with the department and solve that problem on behalf of the Department of State Treasurer. Now, if you're listening at home, you say, why would government ever do that? Well, government would do that because we don't have all the answers. This is part of listening to folks and sourcing through the crowd the very best solutions. A lot of people say the procurement is Byzantine in government. They're right. What if we open this up in a hackathon on particular problems and got the best and the brightest working on it? These are small things at the end of the day, but add up 100 small things, it will change the culture in state government. It will change the culture in North Carolina. Now, PPP, when it comes to our small businesses, and I think about these businesses, I like to think of them as Main Street businesses. We talked before about venture capital, a lot of businesses that are growing fast. The backbone of the North Carolina job market is Main Street businesses. The jobs you'll find when you walk down Main Street, right? Restaurants, retail. PPP failed. You know, a lot of the PPP loans went to companies like Shake Shack and NBA franchises. And meanwhile, our small businesses in North Carolina weren't getting access to the funds that they deserved. Because of that failure, a lot of businesses now have failed in North Carolina, and the state has limited funds to deal with that. One of the things we can do, though, and I'll be chair of the State Banking Commission if I'm elected treasurer, is find a way to increase access for credit from our state banks. This is an area where we need to up the amount of credit flowing to our entrepreneurs during this time because PPP has frankly failed. I hate to say this, but I think the federal government is going to need to reform the PPP program. They will have much larger impact for small businesses than anything a single state can do. We also need to pass state and local aid. Our state and local governments are cash strapped, not because they overspent. We have some fiscally responsible governments in North Carolina, but because of COVID. And so now we're going to need that from the state and local governments. All of our political leaders, all of our elected leaders should be asking the U.S. Senate to pass a bill for state and local aid. Those are probably the best things that are going to help small business down the road. The state can set up new loan programs, new access to credit, but the impact will be much smaller than what they could do at the federal level, just given the size of the problem.
Okay, I mean, yeah, so I think there's, you know, we're hoping there's a fourth stimulus deal. I wish we could get into the Trump politics and everything, but I'm just going to keep this focused on
Yeah.
fireside chat as we, you know, it's been positive, it's been really good.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, do you think that, you know, we're in a transition? This is one question that came in is, what do you think we could be doing better to handle the pandemic? I mean, Governor Cooper's doing a great job, but across the country, do you think we should be, I don't know, I mean, what do you think we could be doing different?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think Governor Cooper is doing a great job, and I support him. I was looking forward to working with him as a team member of the Council of State. I think what's happened is this pandemic has exposed three big weaknesses, I think, that we need to remedy to avoid situations like this. One is our healthcare infrastructure has not been able to keep up with the pandemic in a way that's exposed a lot of disparities in our health systems, especially for people of color. And I think that's become apparent. It's been exacerbated during this pandemic. It's something we need to work on. The second thing I'll say is, you know, we're very divided as a country. And, you know, when masks become, and the wearing of masks become a political argument, you know, we have a big trouble in terms of kind of dealing with this pandemic because we know the things that can help stop the spread: social distancing, wearing masks, and following the other protocols. But because it's become such a political football, it's been difficult for us to rally around that in the way that I think we should have. And if we should have, and we could have, then I think we would have slowed down this pandemic quite a long time ago. I think we'd be in better shape. It doesn't mean that it would have been the panacea, but I think we would have been better off. So those two things, our health infrastructure and our political divisions, which I think are really key to understanding why it hasn't fallen as well as it should have. I'm still hopeful, though, that we can recover from this and be stronger than ever. I think North Carolina is in a great position to come back stronger. There are so many companies who are going to seek to locate their headquarters, but also their workers in places like North Carolina as the geography of America changes and where people want to live change. And North Carolina has the ingredients with our low cost of living, with our fantastic weather, with all the resources and recreational opportunities to be a real magnet for people who are looking for a fresh start. I want North Carolina to be on offense in this post-COVID period, and I think we will be if we get the right leadership.
I mean, I think so, and I think we've covered a lot of territory. I think that the final comment I'll make or question, but I think you really highlighted it well, but I think it's a great way to end the interview is the one thing that John said was during the Startup Summit, the title of the conference was Surviving and Thriving in a COVID Economy. And he said that as someone who survived 5 downturns at Cisco, he says the first thing you could do is you got to preserve your cash. You have to make cost cuts long-term, which you always did at Cisco. During a downturn, when things get back to normal or relatively normal, that's where you do what he called the Texas two-step or the Silicon Valley two-step, where you make the dance to the investors of how you're going to break away. And what's interesting at Cisco, he did that during the bird flu, where they made investments in telepresence. They gave it away for free. People were pulling out of Asia, but Cisco was investing in Asia. And then they had 65% market share, 180 acquisitions over his 20-year reign as CEO of Cisco. Took a company from 100 million to 47.5 billion by the end of his tenure. So the thing is, I think that's great advice for everyone listening today, is to be bold. And during a downturn is where you have time to think of where you can be different and break away. And I think that's what North Carolina has to do, because we can't be huddled down forever, hoping that the virus is going to go away, hoping that the vaccine is going to go away. I think we have to think about conserving our cash, and then what is our breakaway strategy? So maybe that's one thing you can do as treasurer is help the process, right?
Definitely. And the pension fund's a great example where we should be making long-term bets on where the future of the economy is going to benefit North Carolina. This is exactly what we should have this conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. We congratulate you on being the Democratic nominee, and this is a South Asian radio show. So I want to remind everyone that if Dr. Chatterji wins, Ronnie wins, he'll be the first Asian American, Indian American elected statewide, and he'll join the club of elected officials. So we wish you well in the next 50 days of the campaign, and hope to see Neely and the kids in person, maybe over a dinner. And I'm getting tired of this box thing. We gotta
Social distance at least, Steve. But thank you very much for having me. It's a great opportunity.
Well, we're honored, and you can go to Ronnie. Say your website again, so people.
RonnieChatterji.com, RonnieChatterji.com.
Well, folks, be safe during the weekend. I can't believe September is the last week of September. After this next week, you know, it's like get your ballots in. North Carolina State Board of Elections. Go to the beautiful fitness center in Morrisville, which is open. Brand new pool, just wonderful. And get out there and get active and support your local businesses. So thank you, sir. And have a great weekend, and rest those eyes from all those Zoom calls. Thank you.
Thank you.